public Wi-Fi, and I don't want to do that. I should see what's in front of me. You want us to sign these things, right?
Yes, please.
Sign yours?
Mm-hmm.
There you go, ma'am. I know mine's doing too, that's why. I don't even see the option, it's not the public one.
I didn't bring none in here. I should have stuck them under the chairs.
How was your back to school giveaway? Y'all gave away a bunch? Good. I heard they gave away everything at the city too. We had good things going on, but,
Hey, how you doing, Jen?
Big crowd.
Yep.
Is this being live streamed?
It should be.
I think so. I think so.
Must be, we got my home line.
Hey, Lacey.
Hello.
Hey, Sam, how you doing? All right. Hammond City Council Special Session Agenda, August the 3rd, 2022, 12 p.m.
They're so loud.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Andrews,
Present.
Councilwoman Gonzalez,
Present.
Councilman Leon,
Present.
Councilman Diviterio,
Present.
Councilman Wells.
All right. Our prayer. Eternal Father, we give you glory, we give you honor, we give you praise and thanks on today, dear Heavenly Father, just for who you are. Father God, we ask that you continue to move in our hearts and our minds. Father, we ask that you continue to give us the peace that surpasses all understanding. Father, we thank you for Jesus, who paid the ultimate price upon the cross that we too would have access to the tree of life. Father God, we just thank you right now for your grace and your mercy. We thank you that our steps have been ordered by you in every area of our life. Father God, we ask today that everything be done decent, order, pleasing, and in your sight, where you will get glory, honor, and praise out of it all. We ask you continue to bless our city, continue to bless our state and our country, continue to bless this council, continue to bless the mayor and the administration right now. We ask that you continue to watch over our policemen and our fire department, and they continue to protect us. Father, if we need, every time we need you, we just need you right now. Shine upon us right now, Father God. Continue to move in us like never before. Next, we not lean to our own understanding, but in all our way that we acknowledge you in everything that we do. And for that, we give you glory, honor, and praise and thanks. In Jesus' name, amen. Pledge of allegiance. All veterans and active military, please render the proper salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our item on the agenda to review and consider of the report of the Hammond Charter Review Committee.
Well,
Start.
yeah, I mean, I guess we've already had it presented to us.
Right.
And we've all, I guess, had time to look through it. And I would assume we should maybe talk about them one by one. I'm not really sure how you guys envision this, but certainly we should talk about each item, and we have some people here, so I'm gonna leave it up to you how you wanna do
Okay,
it.
well, we'll just start with the proposals
Okay.
and go from there. Number 1.
9. Probably don't have to read all of this, but maybe the first paragraph under each proposal.
Yes,
Back to section 306.
yes.
Proposal number 1. Proposal number 1, 202-11213, section 3-06. Revised to provide that effective January 1st, 2023, a newly elected mayor's salary would be fixed at $95,000 with 2% annual increases, with the salary reverting back to $95,000 upon the election of a new mayor.
I see a PowerPoint presentation that's linked. That's the one we saw previously? Okay, okay. So it's not like we need to go through that again. Gotcha.
So these here with the charter amendments, is it too late really to put these on a ballot, or where's the time frame at as far as if some of these were to be in favor of, would that be this election or next year or?
November's out because we've missed that
Okay.
deadline. December is a possibility, but you'd have to get a waiver from the bond commission. The bond commission would have to approve putting this on the ballot. So you would really need to hot-foot it, and Nick may have some information for us as well.
I printed Nick Gagliano, 902, 905 West Colorado Street, Hammond. I was on the Charter Review Commission. What I did was I printed out, this is from the Secretary of State, the 22 elections and then the 23 elections and the dates that you have to have these to the proposition. So I'll pass these out, and that way you
Okay.
guys can see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
That's helpful.
We're probably too late. Yeah, we're probably too late for 2022, but I'll hand it out as well.
So that would be March would March be the next one, Nick?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
That one for me. That's okay. And am I right in when they have our spring elections, the city doesn't always have items there, and so for us to add items, it actually is a cost to the city, correct? Can someone speak to,
So first, it's always
Having
a cost
elections, okay.
to add items, and you pay per item on the ballot. It's not just a general, here's an
if we had
amount.
10 amendments?
Correct.
Okay.
What kind of costs are we talking? Does anybody know?
We can pull the last one. I think it's going to be somewhere around $25,000 to $40,000. Our next municipal election will give us a good idea because we'll have 6 items on that ballot. So that'll give us a better idea per cost. It all depends on how many people are sharing the ballot, how many items are on the ballot in total, whether there ended up being like a constitutional item on there shared with a millage proposition or something else from some other entity. So the spring ballots are always more expensive than the fall ballots because there's typically fewer things on the spring ballots. So that's kind of just a general guideline. We can get you some approximate costs maybe, but it's going to depend on how many items we're putting on and what date we're looking at.
I was just curious if it was like $5,000 or $50,000 or
It's
100.
closer to
Yeah.
50,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, in addition to cost, we need to consider turnout, right? I mean, people come out for more, items that have a bunch of things on the ballot. If there's federal or state other items that, should we decide to put this on the spring ballot, and it literally is the only thing, what's our turnout going to be? Does that give us a good pulse of what the constituents of Hammond want? I would probably say no, but it's something to consider.
Then, like more than anything, is what you have on the item, what you have on the agenda. that's what people turn out for. Then what's important to the people? Because it don't matter what election is going on. If it's not important to the people, they don't vote anyway.
Okay.
So the election coming up, Ms. Lacey, do that cost the city anything? The one that's coming up in November?
Yes, because we have 5 council members and a mayor's race on the agenda.
4 council members.
Even though I don't know if that's actually going to get fully removed or so.
Oh, I see.
I don't know in terms of cost.
I got you.
But yes, every time we have something on the ballot, it costs the city.
So it still costs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then.
So in other words, we are clear that the 22 election cycle is out the door from what it looks like on this paper and what we were just provided, so
Unless we got a waiver from the bond commission for the December one.
December.
Yeah.
And even then, you'd have to introduce this next week because you have to adopt it by an ordinance.
Is it an ordinance so that,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, because it requires
2 meetings.
noticing, publishing the exact language of what the proposal is going to be, so the public's aware, and would require approval from the bond commission to waive their requirements. So it would be a task.
I don't know that the bond commission would waive a charter
I
revision.
can't answer
Yeah,
for the
their
bond
deadline
commission.
is August 16th
Yes,
to make the December ballot.
and that would require a final
That's correct.
ballot-ready
And we don't have that.
proposition. And we would have to have that in place for that meeting.
So right now, and what I see, that the next one will come up, the second, 2023. Am I right? No, they qualify
the March 25th.
March.
Yes. So the deadline would be December 28th, but it is actually a little bit before that because you have to get it to the bond commission, is that right? Okay. That's feasible, obviously.
Again, what else would be on that ballot?
Anybody know anything that's on that ballot? No? I guess we wouldn't know that till closer to that ballot. Okay. All right.
Back to number 1.
I'll just note that the charter, just for the record and YouTube, the Charter Review Committee hired a consultant to give some recommendations on the charter based on other municipalities, and they put that in their slideshow, which is linked on the agenda item. So, this recommendation falls within whatever a consultant gave them based on other municipalities.
Back to proposal number 1. Anybody have any questions from the audience? If you don't have a copy, there's some right there in the back. Anyone from the council?
I would say that I think that increasing the salary is a good idea. Having annual increases is a good idea. Mayor's a important job. I believe that we're required, the mayor can have no other job, so this would be the sole person's job. Increasing the salary would open the field for more competitive, have a more competitive race and more people interested in it. So I think my personal opinion, I think it's a good idea.
Anyone else?
When was the last time that salary was adjusted? Do we know, roughly? Andre, were you part of that any of your time? It's been that since you think it's been there
Well, no,
since
I
you've
think
been
it's
attorney, or?
I think it
Over a
was
decade.
raised to 75,000.
That's the current
A few
salary.
years back. That was the
Over a
first,
decade.
yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been over 10 years.
Okay, over 10.
since it's been raised.
Okay.
It was raised to 75, and that's where it stood.
From where? From, do y'all remember what the last one was?
I don't know.
It
We
was
could-
65, I
Si-
think, to
okay,
start
about
with, and it jumped
10,000.
to 75.
I will say that the council already has the authority, am I correct?
Yes.
To raise both the mayor's salary and the council member's salary by ordinance.
Yes, and that would only be effective, though, for the next incoming term, whatever that, after this election. And the other thing to consider, the exact language talks about election of a new mayor. So if the intention is to basically recycle this every 4 years, just to make that clear, that could be an incumbent that's reelected, and that salary would revert back, whether that's the mayor or the council. Just, that's got to be clear in whatever, if this is going to go forward. So that every 4 years, the way this is proposed, it reverts back.
Goes back down to 95.
Yeah, and to be clear, whether that's a new term
Yeah.
or whether that's a reelected member.
That's just working out the wording. I don't
Yes.
know if that was the intention. Nick? Yeah.
The intention would be after 12 years. The new mayor, and that would be clear, is after 12 years, if somebody's reelected for 3 terms, then the new mayor would be the actual new person, not every 4 years. So we considered a new mayor would be a new mayor coming in. So if a mayor is elected, like this year, it'll be every year the 2% raise up to 12 years. Then after 12 years,
Goes back to 95.
yeah, if somebody, after 2 terms, and they start, it's basically when the new person starts, that's what we considered the new mayor. Same thing with the council. So it's basically a potential 12-year opportunity to have that 2% raise.
Thank you for clearing that up. Okay.
Anyone else from the council? So Andre, we have to take a vote on each one of these, right?
Not today.
We're just
Mm.
Are we
going over
just-
this, I
we
think, huh? Or we're just reviewing these, or we're not voting today?
Okay, I'm just wanting to make sure.
That's up to the council, how you want to do that. If the
So we
thought
just-
is, this is something that's favorable, then I can draft what might be language for that and have you guys look at it and see if that's,
Okay,
I think it would be helpful if the council gave some indication, and we're not voting on anything today, whether we want to have all 9 of these things put on an agenda for public, drafted and then put on an agenda, or if we want to say, put only a couple of them, I don't know, but I think it makes more sense if it's like, okay, every one of these should be listed on an agenda. Then we have public comment, and then if there's any addition to the 9, that's added or not.
okay.
And I guess you as council president really would be the one making the call of what goes on the agenda, but perhaps at this meeting, we can indicate to you how we feel about that.
Okay.
So we could lump some together. Not necessarily all, but we could lump some together.
I wouldn't lump, I personally think that they probably shouldn't be lumped because it needs to be very clear which one's going on the ballot if they're approved, Even though 1 and 2 obviously do go kind of together, they are separate issues. Some people may not think we deserve a raise.
All right. We can move on to proposal 2, number 2.
Proposal number 2, 202-11213, Section 2-04, revised to provide that effective January 1, 2023, a newly elected councilperson's salary would be fixed at $15,000 with the 2% annual increase, with 2% annual increases, with the salary reverting back to $15,000 upon the election of a new councilperson.
So Nick, that would have the same, it'll be the new person, okay, all right. Anyone from the public have a comment on that one?
Didn't the last charter review, they voted on council salaries at that time, but that didn't pass, correct?
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Okay.
That part of it did not pass.
It didn't pass to increase the salary just for the president.
Oh.
So I think that was the ask is for, I think, $1,000 extra or something along those lines for the president.
Okay.
Anyone else from the public? Anyone else from the council?
Only other thing I'll just mention, like I said on the first one, the council already has the authority to raise both the council salaries and the mayor's salaries by ordinance to be effective in the next term.
So we had authority to make a raise right now?
For next term.
Yeah, I want a raise now.
With this authority to do the raise for the mayor and the council within ordinance and not by charter, can we include a 2% as recommended? Is that something we could add by ordinance, or does that need to be by charter?
Well, 2.04 is the referenced section that deals with, for example, council members. And that was increased in it was $300 a month, and it was increased, looks like, to $1,000 a month in 2015. And then it says, council members shall be paid $1,000 until changed by ordinance. No ordinance changing the compensation of a council member shall be adopted during the last year of a term of office. And no such ordinance shall become effective during the term of the council adopting the ordinance.
So we can't actually do that right now.
I think we've missed that. That vote was missed. The council can adopt by an ordinance a system for reimbursement of reasonable expenses.
All right. Anyone else? Proposal number 3.
Proposal number 3, 20211-213, Section 2-08, revised to provide the council shall appoint, remove, direct, and supervise an employee of the city who shall have the title of clerk of council, who shall serve at the pleasure of the council.
Anyone from the public on that one? Anyone from the council?
Let's clarify the serve at the pleasure of the council. I believe that we've already been told that the council hires the clerk. The council could terminate the clerk. It's up to the council because it's the council clerk serves under the council, obviously. But they're still a city employee, is that right?
Well, yeah, so so the 2.08 reads, the council shall appoint an officer of the city employee, who shall have the title of clerk of the council. But the difficulty is there's a companion section of the charter which says, except as otherwise specifically provided, the council does not involve itself in personnel matters. So traditionally, if a person is giving the authority to hire someone, it generally follows that if you can hire them, you can also fire them. Except for, in this charter, it says, unless it's specifically provided, the council does not involve itself in personnel matters. So you can hire this person, but I don't know that you can fire this person because of the prohibition in the charter that prevents the clerk from being involved with personnel matters. And that is something that ought to be discussed and debated about what would be proper for the council clerk.
So in other words, Andre, the only way this person could be terminated, it would have to be done through the city administration, from my understanding, from what you just read. Nobody on the council would have the authority to have to actually do that.
Correct.
Okay.
And to be clear, Ms. Lisa, we're not talking about you, we're just talking about the job. Okay, making sure we get the wording right if something needs to change.
You recommend any amendments to that or clearing that up, or do you think it's good to have it kind of,
It's the
Rick.
council's clerk.
yeah,
And if the council hires the person, again, generally,
yeah.
if you hire the person, you have the authority to fire the person. Now, whether that requires 3 votes of the council or 4 votes of the council or something else is worthy of discussion. And then supervision gets to be a little murky, because who supervises the clerk? As it is now, she's a city employee and is supervised under the general authority of the mayor. That would need to be some discussion of what's appropriate. You know, it shouldn't be one council member, because you got 5 council members directing the clerk. So all that would need to be clarified, whether that's the president or if something else. And I'm just throwing out possibilities, and that would certainly be something for further review and discussion.
I don't know the answer to it, but it seems like it might, could use some cleaning up.
I agree.
But not, I'm not sure exactly what I feel on that right now, but, and that's nothing to do with you, Lisa, either. I'm just talking about the way it's written for future.
But the council clerk do work for the councilmen, right?
The council clerk has a whole list of responsibilities in the ordinance. It's like 42 specified items by ordinance of the council, what her duties are, his or her duties are. So the duties are primarily the council's business. Yes, sir. That's all in, that's in section 2.24, the clerk of the council duties. That's not in the charter, that's by ordinance. So those could be revised by the council by ordinance. The part about firing, though, and actually supervision, that would require a charter change.
Noted. Anyone else on that proposal? Proposal number 4.
Proposal number 4, 20211-220, Ethics Section 7-03, revise the first sentence to add all officers, officials, and employees of the city, whether elected or appointed, paid or unpaid, shall be subject to and comply with all state ethics laws, codes, and regulations. Eliminate the second, third, and fourth sentence of section 7-03.
Anyone from the public on that proposal?
I'll just note for anyone watching that our charter provides for an ethics board that's never been formed, or at least hasn't been formed in a long time. So this was just cleaning that up so that the state's ethics laws, codes, and regulations would govern everyone in the city.
Anyone? Okay.
I will bring up on this, we're trying to keep it short of one Dartbrook Circle. It's just, when we kind of discussed this, we also had an issue with, if y'all were to put this forward to the voters, that it would be important for them to understand that you're not trying to get out of any type of ethics thing. It's just the kind of what Councilwoman Gonzalez was saying, is that for whatever reason, that committee has never been constituted as far as anyone could find in any memorable existence, if ever, right, Andre?
That's correct. And if it does come up, you ought, as Frank is alluding to, you ought to have a specific statement that they will be governed by the state
Right.
ethics. So
And-
there
and
are
that-
standards they'll have to apply to.
And that at some point, the state also created its ethics division, and that would have always trumped anything this did anyway. It could potentially create conflicts and all. It's something that if y'all do move forward on, I would be very careful with, particularly during an election year, but at any point, in that it does seem like something that could be easily misinterpreted or confused if it's not properly communicated to the public, what's actually going on there.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else? Proposal number 5.
Proposal number 5, 2021-0221, Section 4-01, revised to provide all department heads during their term of office shall live within the parish of Tangipahoa, but no further than 2 miles from the nearest point of the city limits.
Did the Charter Review Committee determine whether we should use the word domicile or reside for this item? Council or Charter Committee? Is there any indication of that?
What was approved there, as it was written, exact language that y'all received is what was
Shall live.
is what was unanimously approved by the council, I'm sorry, by the committee. We did approve actual writing, not theories. We went through it in terms of the language there. I believe, does the charter, the charter currently uses the term live, I believe, for that provision.
Okay,
And so we just stayed with that.
okay.
There is a distinction in law to domicile and residence.
Right.
I'm not sure where live falls.
Good evening, Council. Marcus McMillan, 310 East Charles. I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. With this, I would ask you guys to consider whether this is going to be Eagle View, which is an aerial view from center points for direction, or is this going to be street by street? Because when you look at it, you could take any street to get to any residence, and it could be different distance from each point. Next thing I would ask is, what are the guidelines? When I ask the guidelines, you say 2 miles out. Okay, so 2 miles out in my profession, in what we do, or I do, I look at it as if I'm 2 miles out, or if I'm 2.5 miles out, or 3 miles out, even if I'm going to visit family that's 10 miles away or 15 miles away, if there's an emergency, I still have to be here. So what's the difference? If I'm 15 minutes away and have to be here on a day off, it's still the same thing. If I'm at home and I'm sleeping and I'm 10 or 15 minutes away, there's no guidelines. What's the difference to, be able to differentiate between what you're being held at that limit for? And current employees, current department heads that you have now, are they grandfathered in, or is it just new people that are hired from a certain point?
One of those issues in that when we went through it, we did use a satellite, kind of the most expansive version of it, in that it was a 2 mile as a crow flies from the nearest point. So it does create, and in fact, we had some at length discussions about that. The city is not a circle, it's not a square, it's a octopus of sorts. I guess it doesn't have 8 tentacles, but whatever. There are points within the city that you could probably find that you would still be within the city and be further from than, being 2 miles outside of the point without, there are numerous, perhaps inconsistencies with the rule, but it was a rule that was already there. There was a general consensus that, there were certain things that, particularly things like the building and planning and those type of department heads, actually perhaps much more so than Marcus's particular position, where he could probably do a lot of stuff remotely in general, that the proximity to the city and culture was important. And that was, there were discussions that went, ranged from get rid of it altogether because it's easier to hire people to make it a hard limit, domicile in the city limits, type thing.
Can you speak as to why 2 miles was the distance?
Because that's where we unanimously landed. I
Okay.
will tell you, I personally was kind of the opinion, I was kind of brought in, I guess you would say, and that, you know, as I kind of mentioned in terms of Marcus, you know, there is a limit in there now that's 5 miles. You could probably get, if I remember correctly, that puts you, there are points within the city that you can actually be, you know, still within the actual hard city limits and be, I don't know if it's 5 miles, but miles from the other end of the city. So, and just how things have changed, you know, with working from home and everything else. I was pulled in to a tighter window a lot on the grounds that, you know, I've actually seen things come through in terms of planning and zoning and things like that, where it's clear that, you know, Carly, you've been here your whole life. I've been here what I consider to be my whole life, you know. I feel like we know Hammond, we know downtown, the culture, the experience and everything else. We know whether or not this block or that, you know, how those things kind of go, that I don't know that someone should be making, you know, in charge of planning, zoning, that type of stuff that doesn't have that at least extended, in-depth feel the city downtown after 5 kind of experience. So that was.
Andre, does it currently say 5 miles for all department heads? Or
It
what's
reads, this is section 4.01. It
Okay.
reads, all department heads during their term of office shall live within the city limits or within a 5-mile radius of the nearest point of the corporate limits. That's exactly.
And there's no requirement that it be Tangipahoa Parish in there or anything like that? It's
Correct.
just 5 miles? Okay.
Correct. 5 miles of the nearest point of the corporate limits.
Okay.
One other, I've got off track. Sorry,
Good afternoon, Council and
Good afternoon.
Administration. My name's Joe Meir, 44065 High Oaks Trail. These are hired positions at department heads? These are not elected positions, right?
Correct.
I would say ask any business person who they would want to hire for their business. And I think the answer would be, I want to hire the best person that fits the position. Putting a limit on this really limits to 22,000 people. And to get the right talent, I think in these department heads, it should not be a limit of where they live. So our parish is 66 miles long, Tangible Parish. So if we have the right person with the right talent that lives in Kentwood, his or her entire life, but fits the position for a position that we need in Hammond, why would we limit ourselves to hire the best person for the job? So I would ask the council to consider just striking this proposal.
To address your question on department heads, one of the things we did mention, it's not a proposed amendment to the charter, but it's in the second section, is who are your department heads? To me, and honestly, in my opinion, that is more of an important question than even where they live. And we did unanimously recommend that y'all should institute the process of triggering an evaluation and organization of the city. Because if you go to, it came up at one of y'all, at least one of your meetings, about whether somebody was actually a department head or not. And the charter, as it exists now, provides for a method that the administration can propose an organization and department heads to be adopted by the council. And if they don't, at any time, I think it's either a majority, I don't think it's a super majority, I think it's just a majority of y'all can say, we need to reevaluate this. Should IT be a department head? Should whatever be done? And there was some argument or discussion that there have been department heads created by ordinance, or that by the ordinance that approved the hiring of the person for the budget or something, but that's clearly not what the charter provides in terms of creating a department head. It lists some department heads, several of which, you know, have kind of like aren't really, they're not following the duties described in the charter. some of which either don't exist or someone is doing the job, you know, whatever. They don't match up. And there's a specific process under this charter for how you take public input, how you know, it's a process, you know, how you give the public opportunity more than just what a normal ordinance would do. So I don't know that any department head, quote unquote, that was not listed in the current charter has ever been added or created right, you know, as the charter would provide to really make them a true department head.
Just a couple things for consideration. Current charter says 5 miles. Let's be honest, 5 miles is 10 minutes. 10 minutes is pretty quick to be able to get anywhere within the city limits of Hammond. It's after hours, so you're not really talking about a major traffic issue if you do get called out after hours. I do get called out on a regular basis, and I can tell you at 2 o'clock in the morning, it takes me less than 10 minutes probably in an emergency situation to get here. Yeah, the other thing, I guess, to consider is, does it lower your pool as far as the number of people that you can go out and hire or go out and recruit to run different departments within the city? 5 miles is something that's been set, it's in the charter, and that's pretty close, 5 miles. And to say that if somebody lives over 2 miles, they may not be as familiar with the city of Hammond. You know, I eat, shop, do birthdays, do everything within the city limits of Hammond, but I do live a little bit outside the 2 mile radius. So to think that because somebody lives a little bit outside, they're not with Hammond, Hammond's the hub of the parish. So to say, okay, we want to bring it into 2 miles, I think would just be very limiting, number one, and really unnecessary, because I think 10 minutes is a pretty good response time when you're 5 miles out.
Hey, Chief, so how you up here? So do you stay within the 5 mile radius right now?
I do.
Okay. And that's why I'm asking this here. Whether it's 5 miles or 10 miles, a person, not you, Chief, a person that stay within the 2 mile radius, in the 2 mile radius, I think it's a good thing because they have something invested into the area, into the town, just like the city councilmen. They have to stay in a district, and we elected by the public. So if we sitting here getting a department head, I think it'll help out a whole lot, in my opinion, that they do stay in the 2 miles. Because if I'm looking at a job, in which I done had several jobs, I had to move to that area if I wanted that job, and it wasn't a problem. I wanted that job, I moved to that area. So if it's a big deal, far as you moving within the 2 mile radius, you showing how much you want the job. And it's not to you now, you just standing up there. Because I told you it wasn't about you. So anybody that's being hired, they need to stay in the 2 mile radius. That's my opinion.
And my only response to that would be, I don't believe 3 miles is going to devalue somebody's love for the city of Hammond and their belonging to the city of Hammond and being part of the community of the city of Hammond. As a Southeastern graduate, as a business owner, within having a business that I own within the city of Hammond and multiple other things that we do within the city of Hammond, I don't think that all of a sudden at the 3 mile mark, I all of a sudden love Hammond a little bit less than somebody who lives within the 2 miles.
I would just like to let everyone know that during the course of the commission's work, a couple topics took up an inordinate amount of time, and this was one of them. I have to compliment Frank for shepherding this because it was a very difficult discussion. There were lots of things that were brought up. Dr. Landrum brought up the importance of getting the best person for the best job, and that person with those expertise may live wherever. It was not an easy task at all. We reached a consensus, but it was not without a lot of yin and yang. It was just not a simple subject. So I don't know that it's a perfect answer, but it's what we came up with. But I will tell you, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting further discovery on it to come up with the best possible idea. it was limited to the people that served on the commission. We didn't have a whole lot of input, except Dr. Landrum struck a nerve with me, because if you've got a person that graduated from Southeastern in computer science and they live 4 miles outside of town, but this is where they live and this is where they work, then it precludes them from hiring the brightest mind for the job. And that's a real deal. I agree with her on that. But by the same token, we've had a police chief that lived in Slidell. Was here, you know, between 9 and 4 for a time period, but then gone. That didn't work for a lot of the citizens, I can tell you that. So it's a difficult decision, and I'm not sure I know personally what the right answer is. So for what it's worth.
One second, Ms. Lacy. How many department heads we have right now? Ms. Lacy, how many department heads?
Oh, you were asking me, you said 1
Yes.
second.
Yeah, no, I was saying 1 second before you speak. How many department heads we have right now?
I think 15.
15. Okay. Do all of them stay within the 5-mile radius?
I have no idea. I don't check that on a weekly basis.
In the process of being hired, what was the time frame that they had to stay within the 5-mile radius?
We give transition time for when they're hired.
I'm just
Because
asking,
they're moving.
what's the time? 30, 60, 165 days? How many days?
It depends on the case-by-case basis. We've done everywhere from about 6 months to a year.
Okay. And I see, this is one of the problems we have, because, see, I just asked the question, and we keep the rules in our head, but we don't have it on paper, because once the department heads come before us, these questions can be asked, you know, what is the time frame? 60 days, 365 days, 2 years? So it goes back to what I said, and I'm going to say it once again loud and clear. When I apply for a job, they ask me to move. I move in that area if I want that job. If I don't want that job, I tell them I'm not going to be able to move. And I'm saying that because, like the gentleman just stated, you know, it was a long discussion about this. And we need to have a discussion about it, and we need to start the things that's wrong, let's make it right. And I've been saying that from day one. So now, here you the administration, and you can't even give me a clear answer of how many of them stay in Hammond, how many of them stay within the 5-mile radius. And I'm not gonna sit here, and I mean it, I'm not gonna sit here and let nobody waste a lot of my time on going back and forth with none of this here. We can sit here and talk about it. They had 22 meetings. I attended some of the meetings because I wanted to know for myself. I had discussion in the meetings. So we're not going to come here and go back and forth and try to take something out, try to add something. It's just a discussion that we all need to try to get on the same page sometime. And what it's all about, for the 5 people that was picked, the 6 people that was picked on the board, is to make Hammond better. That's what it was all about. It wasn't for you chop her head off, you chop his head off. It's just to make Hammond better. That's why this here come before us. It's nothing that I'm saying or you saying. We just want Hammond to be better going into the future. That's all it's about.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point about policy, really. You know, if there's no structure on paper, if it's, 6 months transition, 12 months transition, 30-day case by case, a lot of this probably would be cleared up if they had a little more structure on paper as far as what's the standard procedure. If somebody lives outside of 5 miles, does he have 6 months to, if he takes a job, to relocate or not? And I mean, then, like you said, I mean, if we have 15 department heads, we don't know if they live within 5 miles or not. I mean, you figured that would have been something looked at whenever y'all made them department heads at that time, at some point in time. So I think it's just picky and choosy. It just, I think more structure would be good throughout the city administration.
My understanding, we were talking about the propositions. So regarding this proposition, I'll share with you what I shared with the committee. I think this proposition is actually ridiculous. I think when I brought this to the committee, I was asking for the 5 miles to be expanded or done away with. It is, and that's for several reasons, to make Hammond better, in my opinion. I agree with Councilman Wells. This is about making Hammond better. This is about recognizing the technology that we have today. This is about recognizing the recruitment and retention situations that we are in today that are very different from when this charter was crafted. I ask you to find other cities that have this requirement for residency, because I have looked through many charters now, and I can only find 2 out of about 20 that even list something about residency. They may list a lot of things about the council approving the salaries. They may list about the confirmation process and the other details that have been discussed here. They may list a lot about job description and tasks assigned to those positions. They may talk about the overall organization, as Mr. DiVittorio has alluded to, but they do not speak about residency. As I said, I have only found 2 so far out of the entire state, and I have looked at probably over 25 or 30 different charters for municipalities. And so that leaves me wondering, why do we want to limit ourselves again? When we make this change and reduce it from 5 miles to 2 miles, we are essentially shooting ourselves in the foot. If you think about it, a department head position is a very different position. It's very different from an entry-level position. It's even different from a mid-career level position. A department head is typically not somebody who's 20 or 25 years old, 28 years old, looking to, move around everywhere. This is typically somebody who's much further along in their career path. They have to have certain expertise. They have to have often certain degrees or credentials or experience in terms of years of supervision of people and of resources, large assets, and of finances. They have very complex tasks that take a long time to get there to be able to perform those tasks. So you're looking at somebody who's mid-career or higher, and typically mid-career or higher has already bought a house, they already have kids, they already have a very well-established place where they live. And whether that person is 30 miles out or 50 miles out, what you're discussing is a performance issue. If that person cannot get here to perform the job, to the abilities that they're supposed to perform the job, then that's a performance issue. It's not a prerequisite of where they live. So if that person is too far out and can't get here, or too many times they got to call out because, we got to go all the way back home to do the X, Y, and Z, that's a performance issue. It's very different from a prerequisite based on the distance they are from where they work and live. I would tell you that many people in Baton Rouge who work for our state government do not have a residency requirement to work in state government. Many people during COVID, we saw all kinds of new ways and new technology deployed to encourage work. The smartphone that most of us carry around enables you to do a lot of things before you're actually on site, or without even being on site. I think there's also a misunderstanding of the structure of the departments themselves. If being physically present every moment of every day within the city, or with even 5 miles of the city or 2 miles of the city was a requirement, then none of us could ever go on vacation. Couldn't go to Tahiti, couldn't even really go down to Slidell, couldn't go to New Orleans, because we would have to be here at all times. Be here physically at all times. The structure of the departments have people capable of stepping up in leadership roles when things happen, because it might happen when somebody's on vacation. That can't be, we don't know when that's going to happen. It might happen when somebody's really sick and can't be here. So the structure on purpose and the people who are trained to work under these department heads are trained to step in when that moment requires it. But again, it becomes a performance issue. If that department head is constantly absent, if that department head is unable to perform their tasks to the ability that they're supposed to, that's a performance thing. That means that perhaps they should no longer be the department head. But that's a job performance. Proximity and where you physically live should not be a prerequisite to receiving the job and the capacity for doing that. And the last thing I'll say is that because all these other places don't have the residency requirements, they can recruit and retain much faster and much better than we can. Do we really want that? And is that what is best for Hammond? In my opinion, I say absolutely not.
That being said, I don't think nobody ever stopped nobody from going on vacation. I don't think nobody ever stopped nobody from going to a funeral. So was it a funeral in California or Texas? You still have to take care of your business. But yet, you said something, and I'm not going to go back and forth, but the department heads as of right now, and what I do know, when I call the permit office looking for something, Robert Morgan don't be in. And they can't give me no answer because Robert Morgan not in. And then right now with, I guess the street supervisor, he went on vacation and he was working on something. And he told a resident, I'm gonna be on vacation. Ain't nothing I can do until I get back. So that being said, whoever in charge need to train somebody, because if a department head die right now, who gonna be able to take over? Right now, we got an issue right now with the building permit office. All the permits are on hold
That's
because
not
we
true. That is not true.
Miss Lacy, I'll let you talk, please. And we not, Miss Lacy, come on. I can tell what you love and what you don't love. Yes, ma'am, you come to the front, please.
I'm sorry, could I address that other statement? Okay, since I'm at the building permit office every day.
I only have one comment, and we talked about this a lot. We discussed it. It was open to the public for discussion. We weighed both sides, trying to figure out what is in the best interest of the city of Hammond. And the one thing that I do resent in this discussion is that our stuff was called ridiculous. I could see it being, I don't think this is appropriate for the city of Hammond. I think that another avenue is better, but to get up after we've worked, came out here every evening, made proposals, and to call those proposals ridiculous because you don't agree with them, I think is an insult to all of us who worked hard to do that. And I wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult the work because I do know everybody worked really hard on this and we sat through many meetings. And so that was probably a very poor choice of words. And I'm sorry about that. I do not agree with that proposal.
And I guess, again, people say I like to argue, and I guess I'm kind of arguing the position contrary to my own personal position, but I will address a few kind of fallacies in that my guess is that, without having any hard statistics on it, that just about everybody that works in Baton Rouge lives within the state of Louisiana and state government. I'm not saying you couldn't find one outlier somewhere, but that's not really apples to apples. And again, I don't know why I keep picking on you today, Carly, but
I have an idea.
you know, I think the character of downtown Hammond, which is in your, actually I guess it's in Councilman Andrews' district too, but the character of downtown Hammond, which is where probably between Hammond and the DDD, probably within the DDD, I'll say the most development and change is occurring, is drastically different from 9 to 5 as opposed to after 5. If you're, and if you have a family with children and everything else, and you go home outside of the city and, you know, wherever, you're not coming back to the city downtown. I think those points actually kind of, like, she's actually kind of dragging me more in than I was to start with. and that those are the people that need to be in the town, experiencing the city, because the city changes from time to time. It's not about being there on the site. Like I know there was a discussion about the fire chief, and I don't mean to pick on him either. I don't even know where he lives. He might live right in the city. I don't know. But the fire chief's response time to a fire should not, I mean, I don't expect our fire chief is the one front line of the fire truck holding the hose that they can't move the fire truck without him. But again, going back to planning, zoning, things like that, I think there is a immersion that's necessary to really be able to fully address things that can't be done otherwise.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just,
My question is something broken? That's what I want to know. And before you answer that, does the city, I know you guys have a hard time getting talent. We know that. We've seen that. But is there a problem which makes us want to decrease it? Is it working at 5 miles? Other than it not working for recruitment, is there any other reason to make it smaller because there's a problem? I don't know about that, and I don't see a problem. So I'm curious as to why we're shrinking it unless we're trying to address an issue that I don't know about.
I said earlier, this was all over the place, okay? One thing that I failed to mention earlier that I think is material is our market area, okay? When I talked to Dr. Scott, when we were, trying to get him to help with the committee, I saw an old statistic. I looked at some State Farm statistics, and our market area now is 160,000 people, okay? Part of the discussion that came up in the commission was, what about affordable housing for someone? They may not be able to buy land in the city of Hammond because I know what I paid for mine, and it was pretty expensive. So those issues came up as well. And is it broken, Carly? I think Dr. Landrum hit on it again. Accountability and holding people responsible for performance is where the rubber meets the road.
But that's not addressed with changing the radius of, yes.
No.
That might be a problem, but this isn't the solution to that problem.
No.
So we need to be having a different discussion if that is an actual problem.
Right. But to answer your question, is it broken? Probably not.
and
During y'all's discussion, did it come up that maybe certain department heads needed to be more in a tighter radius than other department heads? And I guess I'm going back to something someone said earlier, and also what Dr. Landry said about performance. Is some of this being examined because of a handful of department heads that could be carved out, or is it a holistic thing? And again, going back to performance, there are probably some department heads, in order to maintain optimal performance, they probably do need to be in a tighter radius, whereas others could probably be in another state. I don't know, but so was some of that part of the broad discussion?
Steve, it was, like I said, it took up a lot of time, didn't it, Ronnie?
but that was exactly what I was gonna bring up, is what Steve said. So that's a good point right there.
Yes, is the short answer to that question. It was. And like I said, I keep going back to the things for me, like, we had getting a little off track here, like, we had a meeting of the Downtown Development District where there was a historic district department head that came in there, disproportionately aggressive for the city of Hammond, is the best way I could say it. In that, and I think it is more applicable to that. How planning, zoning, housing, historical districts, which I don't know if that's even technically a department head, but regardless, so there is some bearings in there in terms of where that is. Like I said, we talked about Marcus. I mean, probably Marcus can do 90% of what he can do remotely.
He right behind.
Okay, anyway.
Need to move.
So that was, but then you get into the practical aspect of it. You've got a charter to amend. You've got to get it on a ballot. You got voters to approve on it. You got trying to, I got, again, swayed into this because from a practical aspect of it, if you try to amend the charter and you're saying these 5 are this one is that, this one, how complicated does it get to the point where you've got this ambiguous, or not necessarily ambiguous, but this overly wordy, long proposal, and then the voter just looks at it and goes, I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know, the city hadn't fallen down, no, you know. You know, again, we ended up, or at least I was brought into where we are with just leaving it as a blanket thing, because if y'all do try to make the change, it does have to go to the public, it does have to be voted on, and I didn't want to get into well, there's 2 aspects of that. One is, first, to address specific department heads, you got to figure out what specific department heads actually exist, which to me was ambiguous for the reason I said earlier. Then you have to, what happens when those change? Do you have to go back and amend the charter every time to do that? And then just to even change it, if you were ignoring all that, just to make it applicable to different standards, is you've got to get it, identify the things. The voters got to understand, wait a minute, so-and-so and so-and-so is this distance, so-and-so and so-and-so is that distance, so-and-so and so-and-so is this district. Well, what if I think, this person should be 2 miles and not that person, So it just seemed like make it simple, yes, no kind of thing.
Wouldn't it be simpler for this to not be an aggressive charter change, right? So that this is policies and procedures, maybe ordinances, maybe we review and restructure what are the department heads, and there are requirements under ordinance for them, instead of putting this to the citizen. So as you say, they'd be like, well, the city's not falling down, I don't care about that. Why are we trying, a charter change, there's like a constitutional amendment, right? I mean, it is difficult to get people to care and understand what you're actually doing and the implications that come from the change. If it's something that can be fixed without such burden, then why would we not do it by ordinance?
Well, you can't change it. You can't deviate from the 5 miles because it's in the charter.
Right, but going less to 2. If somebody thinks that this person should be 2, well, we can change that, potentially.
Well, I guess,
But to Carly's point, the council could just not confirm that appointment. If you felt that person had some requirement or lack of requirement, then the council does have the overall, for those department heads under the charter,
Yeah.
you could just not confirm the appointment.
But when you do that, when you don't confirm the appointment, then you end up being punished. I know you're not gonna say that, but on record, I can sit there and say, if somebody come before me and I sit there and ask 2 questions that the administration don't like, then it don't punish me. My district end up being punished because as of right now, this still don't take place because I didn't vote for that person like they brought before me.
well, and to say that, it does put it, if you try to enforce that rule on a case-by-case basis, it does put it in terms of the council versus the individual as opposed to a policy decision.
What if you took away the 5 mile thing completely and then created rules within each department based on the skills and competitiveness of the job kind of put, if we determined that needed to be the case, like take away 5 miles. And then for IT, because we all realize IT can be done anywhere, they could live 30 miles if we wanted to put something.
Frank, for a charter, for a charter change, under this, you're giving the public an opportunity to say, well, we want to bring the 5 miles into 2 miles. But we're not giving an opportunity to neither or. In other words, I may feel like that there shouldn't be a residency requirement at all. And maybe that should be the charter change. Should the city of Hammond, should the charter have a residency requirement or not, period? And if the majority of people say yes, they should be, then the administration, the council could go back and try to put that in place. But with this charter change or not, whether they vote, no matter how they vote, we still have a residency requirement. I thought.
So the either or question, that's probably an Andre question. I don't think you can propose an either or option, but I could be wrong about that. But in terms of the removal of it altogether, I do, and again, the only way to find out is to try it. But my suspicion is that in terms of getting to the polls, that most people, when they look at it, are, even in this day and age, going to say, no, people should live here in Hammond, you know, or something to that effect. So I suspect you're going to be
Back in the same place, is that what you?
yeah, like even when we sit here and debate it, and we all might come to a conclusion when we're having this, I suspect if the proposal was put on the ballot, remove it altogether, that that's just going to get shut down. That's just, and again, I don't have any, even though, like I said, to some extent, that was where I personally started at. But I mean, you know, it's, my guess is just a person has that. My prediction would be that would be difficult to get that passed.
And I guess just my statement is, you know, for an IT head, I mean, like you said, he could live pretty much anywhere with technology, but, you know, code enforcement, for instance, you know, me being a councilman in the district, you know, you have people that come to me all the time, you know, complaining about this and that. Well, if, you know, I'm not saying he does or doesn't live in there. I mean, I guess I don't even know who's the head of that right now, but if he was, that position was in the city, close into town, he would see a lot of the code enforcement issues or whatnot, and probably be a little more attentive, or the residents would find him a lot easier and go to him and tell him or her, oh, we got this issue here, there, and he, you know, he may be a little more attentive as opposed if he lived in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or wherever, and wasn't so engraved into the city of Hammond. So I think certain department heads, you know, definitely would be a good idea to, you know, to live in the city for better performance.
So just as a performance issue again, and as a point of interest, because we're hearing now a discussion of people who are not department heads. So the head of code enforcement is not a department head. The historic district is not a department head.
So where would that fall under the code enforcement?
Code enforcement is under the building department, and the building official is the department head of that.
And who is the building official right now, the head?
That was Robert Morgan.
But right now?
Right now, I'm over there every day organizing the department.
So we don't have one?
We have a building official, we have a deputy building official who has the building official certifications and the capacity to perform all the inspections. So he's doing all of that. We still have our code enforcement crew leader, Bobby Mitchell, who oversees all of those things. There was also reference to the planner. The planner is not the department head. That position also falls under the building official as the department head of the building department. The other thing I'll say again, and we keep kind of talking about schedule, and I think we're also making assumptions about schedule. We're making assumptions about lifestyle choices. The discussion is that somebody's here from 8 to 4. A lot of our department heads work way more hours than that because they're salaried. But in addition, they do work when needed. So we have department heads who stay much later than that. We have department heads who come in much earlier than that. We have department heads who work a split schedule due to their tasks and requirements. So they may work part of their day, go home for a couple hours, and then come back, depending on whatever the task is or the project is or the work to be performed. The idea that department heads work 8 to 4 and go home and just work that every day regardless is really, I think, inaccurate. And I think, you know, this is personal. I'm very close to this. I've sat through many interviews now. We've had at least 5 different interviews in the last year where in the last, I should say year and a half, because we haven't really had a lot in the last 6 months. But in the last year and a half, we had several interviews, at least 5, where the candidates, either at the beginning of the interview or at the end, we had originally the question about residency and kind of just going through the housekeeping things. We talk about credit checks and all these other things. And it was towards the end, and we would say, okay, just a reminder, you need to live within 5-mile radius because you would be the department head. And several of the candidates looked straight at us and said, oh, we thought that was flexible. And I can't accept this position. I'm sorry to have wasted your time. So then we restructured the interview where that question would be the first question out of the chute because it became such a deal. And I then remember having a conversation with somebody in my office for 20 minutes because that had derailed the entire interview, and now he wanted to know what his options were in terms of transition in terms of, okay, could I have different residencies? Could I have, you know, could all these options? And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's easy to say when we're here in the meeting that, you know, we recognize that it's a challenge, but it's an extreme challenge. We have, just in the building department, we have 2 people who are probably really capable of becoming a department head, but neither one of them live within the 5 miles, and they're not willing to even come close to that because they're already domiciled, they're already locked into where they are and where they own a house and all that kind of stuff. So like you've said, you know, yeah, if you're not willing to move, you don't get the job. Well, that's the deal. So, but it is a very challenging issue. And I think we had lots of discussion in the meetings. I think the committee had lots of discussion among themselves about this. I know that it's referenced in 3 of the meeting minutes, and one person was asking early on in very general terms about, you know, saying, well, I think a chief has to be here nearby. And so the idea that you're debating about, does it apply to more, certain positions maybe more so than others? I think they definitely looked at that. I voiced my opinions. And then we had another person who was opposed to it. So there's, you know, it hasn't been discussed far and wide because the charter committee had so many meetings and did such a good job and had so many detailed discussions that there wasn't necessarily a large attendance at a lot of those meetings. So some of these may have to have more meetings and more discussion with the council about really getting a lot of public input about these ideas.
But this here item here, and Frank, help me out if I'm wrong. This here was recommended by all the charter members, right?
All 5 of the council appointees and the mayor's appointees as well. There's been much to do. Whether or not the mayor's appointee had a vote.
Yes.
He formally did not have a vote. However, we included it. And all of those that we identified as true recommendations were made by all 6 votes.
Long story short, yes, it was unanimous.
Yeah.
Let's speed this up.
So I'm saying this here, if all y'all agree to it, and now in which the public had opportunity to come to all y'all meetings.
And they did. The first, you know, by the end, there were 22 meetings, but by the end, it was basically the committee. In the beginning, we had a pack house, at least a few meetings, and we did reach out to past mayors, councilmen, y'all helped with this. Y'all appointed us, you know, we knew to get people. So, I mean, yeah, the last meeting, I think it was 5 or 6 of us or whatever, but that was the first meeting.
So I'm saying this here, if all y'all agree to this, it got me puzzled that the administration have so much rejection against it. If all 5, well, you say 6 of y'all agree to this. And it really got me puzzled, like, if a person wants the job, move to the area.
Well, there's no perfect answer. Like y'all, whether you set it at 0, you know, we did come to, you know, a consensus. All 6 was unanimous. There's no, like, at some point, I can't defend anything in this. I mean, I can't defend that 1 is the perfect answer. I can't defend 0 is the perfect answer. There is no perfect answer. The consensus that the 6 of us came to is 2 miles. That's the best I can say.
And just to give you my my theory on it as well, is that when we were asked, and I came in late because I filled in somebody who resigned, is that I felt that we had to give the proposals to the council, then the council will make a decision. So like you said, a consensus, it wasn't like a win or lose, it's what can you live with, but I always felt that whatever we voted, it was it was a recommendation for the council, and the council, the administration, there's 2, I'm gonna say 2 bites at the apple if you introduce it, and then there's a public hearing. So I always felt that to keep it moving forward, because we could have debated this we still could have been in our meetings debating this because there's really no right or wrong answer, but to vote it out of our committee, to present it to the council, so that way it's your responsibility, your prerogative, whether you want to put this to a vote for the people or not. So that's why it came through. So it wasn't for us on the commission, for me personally, it wasn't like, I'm going to draw the line in the sand, and this is what we believe. It was to keep the process moving along, to get it to you, so we could wrap up our role, because all of these are emotional issues. They have pros and cons, and it was just let's keep it moving forward. So that's my theory on the role that I played in putting this together.
One question I would like to say, first off, the charter committee, they did an excellent job. I really think that they did, and it's a task that I probably wouldn't have wanted to do. So hats off to you guys. But one question I'll go back to that I've asked that I don't think that has been touched. The current department heads that are here now that met the obligation of the 5 miles, if it's changed to 2 miles, what is expected of those department heads?
Yeah.
Look like he got the answer.
I definitely don't have the answer. I would say, you know, from these recommendations that you guys are getting, how does it help you make the city better? Does this proposal help you make the city better? Does it give you the ability to hire the right person for these 15 positions that's going to serve and make our city better? Or does it handcuff you and limit you to what's left? So we've got a 5-mile radius down to a 2-mile radius. We only have 22,000 people within the whole city of Hammond. So if we limit that down to 2 miles, how many people are within that 2-mile radius or that 2-mile? So now we went from 22,000 to what? 4,000 people maybe? We don't know, right? So why handcuff yourself when you're looking for the key positions that's going to help make your city better?
Thank you. Proposal number 6.
Proposal number 6, 2022-0314, for department heads, subject to confirmation by the council. The council members shall receive at least 30 days prior notice to any proposed council confirmation, hearing information, and documentation concerning the potential candidate, including but not limited to the candidate's name, application, background check, criminal check, resume, references, and qualifications.
All right. Anyone from the public on this matter?
Could be corrected if I was wrong, but I don't actually remember much opposition or contradiction to this one. I think y'all have run into this experience throughout various times in your terms. I think, as Councilman Wells pointed out a few minutes ago, if you start asking questions about any particular person, it gets taken as though a interrogation or indictment on that particular person. I think this is a good way to clear that up, get some rules down, and also I don't remember any opposition to this at all. Any opposed public input on this. So
I think it looks good.
I think this was one that actually, I don't know how much debate occurred, but not debate in terms of whether or not it was right directly.
I don't recall, but didn't we pass an ordinance requiring certain things be given to us? I'm looking on my thing. I don't see a signed one, and I don't recall if it passed. But I think we addressed this within an ordinance.
I think it was like a week or two. I think it might have been an appointment or something would have been given to us a week or two before notice, but it wasn't in this great detail, which this sounds really good to me, put together, this proposal.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think what Sam and Carla are referencing to, it was sometime this year, in the earlier part of this year.
Or something around appointment time, I think.
Not too long ago. Yeah.
My only point of bringing that up is if we've already done it by ordinance, maybe if it needs to be 30 and it doesn't say 30 there, again, why are we giving things that we can accomplish by ordinance? Why would we put it on the charter, clutter the charter, add things to it? It's just something, there's a couple of things on here. If we can do it by ordinance, why would we not do it by ordinance? And I do want to go back and see what that ordinance was that we approved.
One of the reasons why some of the things we do on that charter that can be done by ordinance was one, because we hadn't seen it done, and so we assumed that maybe the city council hadn't realized. The second, we knew it was a political hot potato, and we figured that it would be better to come by ordinance because council members may vote according to different incentives, let's put it like that, as opposed to what the public may or may not want. So although there are several things in there that can be done by ordinance, we decided to put it in as a charter amendment. One, so that it could be a permanent thing and wouldn't be easily changed. Two, because we thought it was a political hot potato and would be better if the people voted on it. And third, because we did not see any action that the council had taken regarding those issues that we thought were important.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Well, I'm glad it's in there because we're having an issue right now and we can't get it straight with the chief of police. You know, he was brought before us and look how many things was hid from the city councilman. So now we have an opportunity to know prior to anybody coming before us, we have all the information in front of us. And we won't have to make that mistake approving somebody not knowing everything about them. So I think it's good myself because 30 days, that's enough time for us to know everything about a person. And it goes back to the, you know, the tape. You know, it goes to the 20-second clip that we didn't know the whole thing and found out it was 14 minutes and we thinking it's 20 seconds. And then it was just a lot of stuff was hid on everything, and from this point on, that we would know that it would actually be brought, everything will be brought before us. And that's all we want. That's what I want.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Number 7 proposal.
Proposal number 7, 2022-0321, amend the charter to provide for a planning and zoning commission to consist of 5 persons, each appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the city council. The members of the commission shall be chosen by the mayor, 1 from each council district. Each member shall be an elector or owner of real estate in the city, either as an individual or through a company.
Anyone from the public on this proposal?
One question I have is the 1 from each council district, does that mean 1 that actually owns or is an elector from District 2 or District 2's choice to choose from someone that doesn't live in District 2? From each council district, I read that to mean it needs to be a person who is an elector in my district, or owns property in my district, and I just want to make sure that's the correct interpretation. Yeah? Okay.
And it's funny how this will come up, you know. I was at Dirt Cheap Sunday, and a contractor, I guess he recognized my face, said, "Man, I know you from somewhere." And we started talking, and he sat there and said, "Why now, if you're going to have those guys sitting on the board planning and zoning, you have to have people that know about real estate. You have to have people that know about construction." And one of the problems that he had, and I shared, he was talking about the lights, the street lights, and building a subdivision. The light company would actually put the poles down for the street light. He said by him being a contractor, and he done went through this, he said it ended up costing him a $200,000 extra because the city requires certain lights by people being on the board, don't know anything about construction. And I say, this is a good one. We need, and I said it several times before, we put these people on planning and zoning. They come before us. But yet, what do they really know about the city or making decisions that affect a contractor or development or anything? So we need to take this under consideration because I wouldn't want to vote for something. And I tell people all the time, another thing we have, the concrete driveways, 6 inches, apron on a concrete driveway at a resident. You know, that The councilman voted on that 20 years ago. And look how that still affecting residents today. 6 inches of concrete. Anybody know about construction and an apron, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Normally, 4 inches, what they do. But this is something that was voted on, planning and zoning, and still today, we still being punished by that rule. So, I consider this here myself, that this is something that the city councilman need to do, pick somebody on the board. So then they have us, Steve, he told me one time, a long time ago when we first became councilman, he said, well, Devon, I pretty much know what goes on in planning and zoning because I have people that I can talk to. And I didn't say that, and I say, dang, I didn't have that. I didn't have nobody I can talk to. Be exact, the only person I can talk to is Mr. Stanley. And we know he's no longer on that board. So I think this will be good myself.
But this doesn't give us the choice. As it's worded, it's the mayor's choice. It just has to be from our district. So if your concern is not having input on the person from your district, that's not, as I read it, what it says.
Well, I wanted to be able to appoint somebody myself on there. But still in all, you need contractors that know about what they doing and how they doing, instead of getting you, we know who on the board right now.
So all those confirmations do come before the city council, and there are contractors and developers and architects, and they all live in Hammond.
Again, there was a great deal of discussion in the commission on this, and I'd refer back to the meeting that we had some 300 people over at the Kennedy Center when decisions were made about the facility put out by the airport. There was a great deal of public concern that there was not representation from each district, whether they be schooled in construction or not. They would hold the feelings of the people in that district with their decision-making process. And there was also a great deal of discussion about, are we going to let banks and board of directors run herd on what develops around Hammond? Because many of us had seen what previous planning commissions, how they operated. And it was not a forum that represented everybody. It just wasn't. So this was an attempt to give people who live in a district more of a voice in unison with their council person, because they would choose them to represent the people better. And that was the whole idea behind it.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Proposal number 8.
Proposal number 8, 2022-0321, to add to the charter the formation of an advisory committee which would create a community forum for discussion of community concerns. The committee would meet quarterly and take minutes of discussions, but not have any power of investigation or subpoena. The committee would not take any votes, but would keep minutes and submit the notes from the meeting to the council and mayor for review. The committee shall consist of the following members to serve for 1 year term: members appointed by each council member, members appointed by the mayor, and 1 member appointed by each of the following groups: Tangipahoa Chamber of Commerce, the local NAACP, Downtown Development District, and the Southeastern Louisiana University. The committee shall elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary from among its members, which shall all be electors of the city of Hammond. The meetings of the committee shall be open to the public, subject to reasonable rules of participation.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council? All right. Proposal number 9.
Proposal number 9, 2022-0321, charter amendment to require annual evaluations for each department head designated in the charter, which shall be disseminated to the mayor, the council, and the public.
Anyone from the public on that one?
I know earlier, Frank advised that all department heads were not in the current charters. That is correct, right?
Yes, I mean, the charter list, I think it's 7 or 8 department heads and a process to create more of them. And I think the city stance is currently that they've created more based on just an ordinary hiring.
Okay, so with that being said, will the new charter consist of all department heads? And if it does, how will we evaluate to do a public evaluation of each individual department head if they don't deal directly with the public on a day-to-day basis?
Just in response to the question asked about the evaluations of the mayor, the city council, and the public. And if a department head doesn't deal with the mayor, the city council, or the public, then I'm not sure what department they would be in, what their duties would be. The public may not have a response to the IT department head if that department head does not deal with the public. But that does not mean that the mayor and the council may not have, cannot evaluate that person. This is not something that is unique to Hammond, would be unique to Hammond. They even put chiefs all over the U.S. You can find those annual evaluations. And what it is an input for the person in charge, the mayor, his staff, to have an idea of what people are doing. Sometimes the public has a better idea about what's going on, what they see, what they experience. And then you can take these evaluations, review those evaluations, and the people in charge can then make decisions about, well, whether we need to implement this process, whether this needs to be changed. But at this time, there's actually no set, that we were aware of, set evaluation in place that the public can say, this is good job or bad job. It doesn't have to be, we always assume it's a bad job, but it doesn't have to be a bad job. It could be, I'm evaluating the city. One thing I would like to see is a 24-hour hotline. I'm just using this as an example at the board to be able to call in for whatever. So these are the kind of things that we hope that we were thinking that this evaluation would do, in addition to giving the city a view of the performance of the employees as far as the mayor. That's why we didn't just say public. We put the mayor, the council, and the public.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Anyone else?
I would just ask for clarification on this one, because I think when y'all had your meeting, there may have been a little bit different discussion of this. So the actual language says to require annual evaluations for each department head. That already occurs, which shall be disseminated to, so given to the mayor, the council, and the public. And so was it for public input in that? That's different than I think what this actually reads in the report. So that was my confusion about how this one came, because I remember sitting in the meeting and I thought there was, and Ms. Knight just gave that kind of example of public input into something that seems different from the way that this is written. This would be disseminated to, and I guess the question of dissemination is also how they would be disseminated to the public. Like what does that mean? Because we don't. So they would be given out. There wouldn't be public input received for that evaluation. It was that it would be disseminated out to the public.
My recollection of it was that it was just, and of course, there's going to be redacted parts and whatever, but that there would be something that's publicly available for the public to know that it was an annual evaluation done. I remembered it as actually wrong, but
But I think, did you say, Ms. Knighton, that the public would have a way to evaluate the department head to send it? Okay.
To say, maybe I misunderstood, and that it would give the people an opportunity to do an annual evaluation. When I was ready to disseminate to the public, I thought, well, what I thought we had talked about, and maybe I did listen maybe toward the end where there's a change, was that that we would have a firm, because they have firms who do this, come up with an evaluation where the public can also have input into those evaluations so that the city could then take that input and make decisions and determinations if they thought that things needed to be done or if things are going well to continue in those things if there was a decision as to what to eliminate in a particular department. So maybe I'm maybe I got it wrong. I didn't listen to it.
They're not mutually exclusive either, so there could be a component of the evaluation that involves some public input as well as, I think the specific sentence you're asking about was the dissemination of it, but I think there may have, that discussion.
My recollection of it was that the evaluation would be posted on the city site for anybody that, the public that wanted to read it. If they disagreed with, let's say, I've called this department head 5 times, I've gotten a return phone call, then that would become known to the administration. I thought it was a methodology to give people the ability to review it online.
So I would say both, and that's pretty what you're saying, maybe.
This sounds, this sounds like it could be a nightmare for confidentiality and human resources of department heads of this being put out as a public document. I mean, do we really want the public? I think that's what our council's here for, with our council meetings, for them to come in and voice problems with whatever situations in the city, but to take an actual evaluation that's been completed on their job performance is what we're talking about, right? Is that what we're talking about?
That wasn't what I was talking about.
That's my question, is because I'm confused with the language here.
What I understood, maybe I misunderstood, was that would be, there are agencies and firms that prepare evaluations that are posted on city websites, and the public can come in and they don't have the employee evaluation, what their supervisor said. They do the evaluation of these people, say, we're looking at what, if you have any comment on these particular people, the public then puts that comment in, then they take that, and then they present a report based on the comments from the public to the city or whoever, saying, this is what we found as a result of our evaluation. I would never in any way suggest, because I do HR sometimes, that employee evaluations be put on a website.
Yeah, that's why I was a little confused the way it was.
Yeah, I think the language here is not too good.
Okay.
All right.
So are we gonna need to clean that up a little bit?
Sounds like it.
Okay, and then send it back to us or whatnot, yeah?
I don't think any of these were written to be a
Yeah.
rubber stamp onto a ballot. That's
Okay.
not what, we didn't draft amendments.
Our intent was to present it to you all. We really just kind of thought, I'm ready to be. They call his name out loud, that he would be the one that would probably draft these things into the proper format for you all to be able to determine whether or not you wanted to go on the ballot. That was not our intent, was to draft things that were ballot ready, let's say. We thought that would probably come from the city attorney because of things like what we just talked about, that he would be able to draft that in a way that it would not cause legal implications for the city or the city council.
Thank you. All right, section number 2.
We need to do all that?
Council President, before we move on to section 2, I'd like to just address the council in reference to a possible additional amendment to our charter. After a recent council meeting where I raised the issue of residency for candidates for city council and mayor of Hammond, I returned today to confirm with the council that I followed Councilman DiVittorio's recommendation and reached out to the Hammond Charter Committee. I'd first like to say that I appreciate all the volunteers that served on that committee, and that none of my comments are in any way negative, a negative comment on what they've completed as a committee. I'd be happy to share that entire interaction with the council if you're interested. However, basically, I was informed by the committee chair, Mr. Frank DiVittorio, that the committee has long completed its work, has sent their findings to the council and recommendations to the council. It's now up to the council to do what they decide with each of the three portions of that report. Two of the items that was brought up for discussion by the committee was Article 2 and Article 3, qualifications for the city council and mayor for elections. I listened to the committee meeting that took place on January 20th, 2021 online, where this issue was discussed. A number of the committee members mentioned that this issue has been raised by multiple Hammond citizens over the years and needs addressing. The report and recommendations have been delivered. It was said that you all could accept all of it, part of it, none of it, or add additional changes to this very important document, our city charter. Even this week, we find ourselves again in the court system as people signed up to run for a very local election with distinct district lines in our city limits that may have a residency but may not domicile in the city limits or the district. This is not a judge's race. This is not a congressional race or any other multi-parish race. This is a local race that has qualifications that are gray within our current charter. When it comes to qualifying in reference to residency, it can easily be changed to domicile so that we would not have to rely on the court system to do the work for our city. Domicile is your permanent place of residence. Simply put, your domicile is your home, the place you consider your permanent place of residence. You can have more than one residence, but only one domicile. This would not restrict anyone that lives in a rental home or a leased home from being a candidate as long as the rental unit is their domicile. Right now, you all are reviewing the charter for possible changes for the future of Hammond. This may not get reviewed again for 10 years. So now is the time to address this issue within the charter by changing Articles 2 and 3 from shall reside in the district or city limits to must domicile within the district for council candidates and the city limits for the mayoral candidates. Nearby cities such as Covington and Mandeville have domicile in their charter. So this is nothing new, it's just very clear. In the current language, a person could live anywhere but claim residency on a piece of land and run for one of the city's leadership positions. So I would ask that the city add one additional item to this, possible amendments to our charter to clear this language up.
Thank you, Joe. I'll add, in addition to the two that you said, Slidell, Lafayette, New Orleans, Covington, Mandeville, they all have domicile in their charter, and that was just what I could find in the 10 minutes before this meeting. So I think it's important. Again, we have court cases right now going on, trying to interpret residences. There's a long case history on what it means and what factors and weighing it, and why are we bringing these issues to the court when we can fix this easily, in my opinion. And I think it's important that people actually are domiciled within the districts in which they live and or the city if you want to be mayor. I think it's kind of a ridiculous question to think otherwise. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word ridiculous. I think it's not an appropriate question to think otherwise.
Councilman Gonzalez couldn't agree more. And it seems to me a simple way to address this in the charter would be to define domicile. And a definition, an easy definition, is where do you file your homestead exemption?
But not everyone owns property, so that doesn't.
What's that?
Not everyone owns property. You only file a homestead exemption on property that you own. So someone who rents their home or doesn't own a home, you know. But I see your point, sure. Domicile is a legal term, though, and so I'm not even sure we would need to define it within the charter. If we just use the word domicile instead of resident, it cleans that up. Yep.
Anyone else?
So what do we need to do to add this? Padre?
I mean, that would just be part of whatever the council decides to consider for a public meeting and public consideration.
Perhaps a good way for us to make sure it's properly noticed to the public, everything, not just this issue, obviously, is to have agenda items with each of these. Not actually draft the document yet, because, for example, the city limits, we don't know if 2 or 5 are getting rid of it, but the issue of whether we should even put this on the ballot should come for public meeting. So we could put these proposed items, and then as to that point, whether domicile is one that we discuss, be able to get some public input, and then the council could vote on whether that is one we want to send to the city attorney to draft. And then we can then introduce, I mean, we have quite a timeline here, so we have plenty of time for this. And then we could introduce whatever Andre comes up with after we have voted on what we want him to prepare. That's just my suggestion.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna say one thing. It's amazing. We can say domicile, stay here, but yet when it comes to a department head, it don't matter where they come from. But now, when they running for office, they need to be right here, right here. They don't need to go nowhere. But it's amazing. I think it's the same thing that we're looking for. To make Hammond better, you need to stay here.
You baited me into it, Councilman. I almost got outside when I was back and forth on that, is that you notice you have the same exact person. On one hand, hire them from wherever because that's what you have to do to get the best person. But on the other hand, the only way to get the best council person is if they have one homestead exemption in a particular place. And changing it from domicile to residency just means you're arguing over domicile or you're arguing over residency. It doesn't eliminate court things. You can't claim a residency on a piece of land like somebody said. That's absolutely false. In fact, somebody went to jail for that not too long ago. You know, it's a there's a standard what a residence is. There's a standard for what a domicile is, and those terms are well defined.
Well, I don't know if that's true. You're actually about to go have an appeal on that question right now on one that you're arguing. So I think that it is a prime issue for determining, for questioning, for trying to find out if people care. And let's be very clear, there is a huge difference between being an employee of the city of Hammond and being the streets department guy, right? And being an elected official where people have gone, hold on, let me finish. Elected official who's directly answerable to the people. The administration can fire a department head. The people, trust me, they would fire us if they could, probably. They're not able to. It's the electors. And it's a very different thing for a city council person or the mayor to actually live in the area in which they're trying to serve their constituents. I think that comparing the two is not even close.
You are closer to the truth than you think there, in that you forget that all of us as voters are the ones that you work for and the city administration work for. You work for us, the voters.
Right.
They work for us, the voters.
I understand that.
The person who's the ultimate hirer of all of you and all of the employees and all the department heads, it's not you, it's not the administration, it's not the mayor, it's the people.
Right.
You are hired and fired directly by the people.
Right.
So they have every 4 years an opportunity to decide, does this person live, without any definition of it, without any legal requirement. When you run and you run against somebody, the voters have the right to say, you live close enough, you don't live close enough. You reside close enough, you're domiciled close enough. That's what I'm fighting for in that lawsuit, is for the people to have their say, their direct, 100% pure voter, citizen of Hammond to have their say on it. What you're talking about, an employee, that's removed from the voters. The voters do not have a direct say on on each department head, on each employee, and where they live. So what your argument there is that they're different is correct. You and elected officials are more answerable directly to the people that they work for. That should mean that the people that are voting should have the freedom to say, or more direct say, in terms of, yes, that person's qualified. No, that person's not qualified. they don't have that direct say with employees. That's what the charter and things are intended to do, is to protect their say.
As to the electors, all I'm trying to point out is personally, right, not as your elected official, but someone who lives in the city of Hammond, I want my representative to be a person who lays their head down in the city of Hammond every night, not owning property or have the resources available to go rent a property 30 days before qualifying. I want the person who I can talk to whenever I need a sidewalk done or a park done is a person who sleeps here every night, who is invested in the community enough to own a home or rent a home in the city and actually live there. That's me personally. And I have plenty of people who talk to me and tell me the same thing. I don't think it's fair to allow people who have the funds to get themselves in a position to qualify in a strategically appropriate district that they can win in. That's just not right. That's not how we should do things. We're gonna differ on that. That's fine. But the point of this is to allow people to give input and potentially vote on it.
So there's completely apples and oranges. First of all, the public is not here to micromanage our city government. We are here to show up at a ballot box and elect you all to manage our city. The administration is there to do our HR portion of our city services, of our city employees. So to try to compare a department head that's being hired as an employee to a person that's being elected to represent a district, there's no comparison. There's no comparison. You live in the district, you put your name on a ballot, which we appreciate every one of you guys that put your name on a ballot to run to serve the public. But it should be clear, how do you qualify to run for that position in our city? Why is that? I mean, why are we arguing about this? I mean, this is, it just seems to be common sense that you would want the person that lives in the district, representing the district, to live in that district as the elected person. I don't understand why this is such a hostile topic. Multiple municipalities around us have clear language that creates a situation that we don't have to go to the courts to do the work for us. This is, come on, just do the right thing.
Let me raise this to the point of ambiguity and clarification. The actual language is actually residing. Is that different than residency? It uses actually residing. So that, as a lawyer, we raise a whole bunch of arguments. Is that super residency something beyond just that minimal, but not quite domicile? And that's what lawyers make a living off of, that kind of ambiguity. So whatever, as the potential drafter, we ought to be clear. Whatever we propose to the citizens, if anything is proposed, let's be clear about what the rules are for candidates.
Thank you. Number 2.
A list of 8 recommendations to the Hammond City Council, excuse me, that either did not require amendment to the charter or, while unanimously recommended in part, unanimous, I can't pronounce that word, could be reached on all terms. Number 1, budget review, 2022-0210. Unanimous recommendation that the council consider retaining a consultant to review the budget contents for compliance with the existing requirements of the charter.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council? Okay. Number 2.
I'm sorry, on that one, is that meant to be actually a ballot item, or is that a direction to the council?
Or these are ordinances, right? Proposed possible ordinances?
Everything, the only proposed ballot amendments are the first,
First 9.
First 9. The rest of them are things that you all can do by ordinance. To some extent, in my opinion, probably some of the more important and things more in need of addressing are actually probably in this group. But, yeah, these are not ballot amendments.
So I guess, yeah, we could, if we all agreed, we could introduce these and just vote on these in a regular council meeting if the council chooses to.
Right, they're also not written in ordinance form, but yes, the issues are things that y'all could address through the regular ordinance system. If y'all chose. So a few of them, I think, are like the department organization thing. I don't think that's actually, I think they can just call, is that a resolution to call for that or something? I don't know if all of them are even ordinance things, but it's things that you all can do without.
Ballot, without being on a ballot to try, yeah.
Number 2.
Number 2, Department Organizational Structure 2022-0304, unanimously recommended that the council conduct a review of the current departments in relationship to the charter, which provides for certain department heads and a process under Section 4-10 for altering the organizational structure. The current organizational chart does not reflect the department heads listed in the charter and were not adopted pursuant to a reorganization plan adopted pursuant to Section 4-10.
Anyone from the public? Any comment from the council? All right. Number 3.
Master Plan 2022-0323, unanimously recommended the council update the Hammond Master Plan and adopt an ordinance requiring the systematic and periodic review and update of the master plan in the future.
Anyone from the public? Any questions or comments from anyone from the council?
Yeah, is anybody in here a part of the master plan or know anything about the master plan?
The master plan was adopted in 2011 by the city council. Many of the members of the committee are listed within that plan itself. This is something that you could, I think, is already a goal of the building department as a whole. It's just a matter of getting another committee together to review it, dedicating kind of the resources to do so. The last master plan, there was a consultant hired to create the plan. It is a 20-year document. So it was a 20-year vision at that point. And then the consultant would help lead, kind of like what's happening with the housing committee. The consultant would help lead the effort in the details and in the richness of the plan. The committee would be there to help offer guidance and feedback for that process.
That company who we hired to do that master plan, are they still in business and around or not?
So this master plan was actually developed post-Katrina with special grant funding that came from the North Shore Foundation. And it was really 2 different companies that kind of worked together to do the master plan, and then there was later 2 companies brought in to do the Unified Development Code, which was the actual teeth and the laws and the tools to implement the master plan. So if you undertake one, you might realize that you're going to go into the next one as well.
The reason why I was asking if they were around, maybe that would be something, we could look at possibly letting them revise their plan or look at, see if there's updates, needed kind of since the city's growing. That might be something to reach out to them, but I'm not too sure if it's 2011. They may not really be, I don't know if they're around or not. I don't know who did the plan, so we just have to look back, I guess.
So it was Dover Cole and Partners and Villavasso and Associates. Villavasso and Associates, Steve Villavasso lives in Louisiana and actually conducts a lot of the planning commissioner trainings across the state. He's still in operation. Dover Cole, if I remember, was out of Florida, I think. But they had been brought in to do a lot of the Louisiana plans, if I remember correctly.
Just a quick historical perspective on this part. It actually came up when Guy Ricotta was chairman of the board of the Hammond Chamber of Commerce, and we had talks with Gordon Burgess, who was parish president at the time, about the absolute need for having a master plan for the south end of the parish because of explosive growth that we were projected to have and has occurred. and it had everything to do with quality of life issues. For instance, having builders come in and strip 100 acres of land to build high-density housing without having parks in it for the people that live there, things like that, quality of life issues. And the master plan for the city of Hammond, it was asked that we would update and continue to update every year our master plan for quality of life issues. Just that simple. So,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, that's a good idea. Great idea.
So when the last time it was updated?
So in general planning terms, the plan was done in 2011 and adopted then. That's the last official update. The ZMRE master plan was done since then, and so that's a component of the larger master plan. Plans actually typically aren't done every year just because a plan is meant to be a 5, a 10, a 20-year plan. It's a visionary document. What is updated annually, and even sometimes more than that, is the Unified Development Code, which is the specific tools and rules for implementing the master plan. So the master plan gives you kind of the big picture, but those things that give you the detailed way of getting to that picture, those are reviewed far more frequently.
And it probably has to do with a lot of the percentage of growth too. So, I mean, if something is stagnant and not growing, then yeah, I mean, you could probably go 15, 20 years, but if it's growing at a higher rate, it may be more than every 4 years, I mean, 10 years, it may be 5 years or 3 years. So it definitely needs to be looked at because it probably hasn't really had a hard look since 2011 from what I gathered from the conversation. So
the other big plan, I guess that's a component of the master plan, the DDD did do a huge revisioning of their master plan. Yeah. So 2 large components have been done as part of the larger thing, but I agree. Anytime you're growing, anytime you have rapid growth, it's a great time to look at the master plan.
Yep, great idea.
And the reason I asked the question about the master plan, because in the master plan, for what I saw and for what I done read, I didn't see the growth in District 3. That was my concern, and I was hoping somebody could talk about the master plan with me. That's the only reason I asked the question, because I want to make sure that District 3 is a part of the master plan and not just keep being a sewer, a cesspool in District 3. That's why I asked about it.
I would expect the Housing Committee, whenever they come back with their findings, would have a lot that can add to the master plan, so that would be a good way of updating at the same time.
Yeah, so the master plan is based on chapters. There's a recreation chapter that looks at our parks and our other recreation services. There's a housing chapter that looks at our housing component, and I would say definitely the Housing Committee and those consultants are going to have changes to that idea. It's a larger, focus on economic development and what's happening in different places. It's a larger focus on zoning and how you want that to go forward. There's been a lot of discussion about, there was not, the zoning map is part of that, that vision of how you want that development to occur. So it's broken down into chapters by topic rather than by district.
If I'm not mistaken, I wanted to say this probably took place before the COVID actually got started in. We had a meeting here and they discussed some things with the master plan. They had it broke up into different little sections where you could go see some things. I don't know what group put that on. I can't. Okay, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I remember a lot of discussion was brought and taught about with the master plan. Okay. Yeah. Number 4.
Public records, excuse me, 20211-220, unanimously recommended that the council consider action requiring all of its meeting minutes, ordinances, resolutions, codes, and technical regulations be available online in a searchable form for public access and review.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council?
Yes. Let me take this here out my mouth. I would love for that to take place. And now I'd really be scared to say anything, because when I say something, it look like it's a lot of feedback when I say something. So if I want something, it's best I keep my mouth closed, and it might pass. But public records, when I request something for public records, a time frame. How many days, how many weeks does it take to get something from public records? That's a question. How many days it takes to get something from public records, a week, a month, or what?
It depends on the request, Councilman. You should get a response within 72 hours of making that request that says we're in receipt of your request, we're reviewing the information. But it really depends upon what is being requested and what would be a reasonable time to respond to that request.
So, see, by being online, and you can search it and find it yourself. The reason I say that because a couple months ago, now I'm going back to the street, Doctors Boulevard, public record, you receive one document, I receive a different one, and the doctors, they self-receive a different public records request. So how do it change like that?
I really can't answer for why we got different information, Councilman. I mean, that ought to be one question, or the same question ought to get the same responses. I can't answer why there was different information.
Ms. Lacy, you want to chime in on this one?
I didn't see public records requests related to that, so I don't know if the question was asked the same way maybe, or if it was a different time period, or if it was a different wording. I don't know. I don't know if the, I guess this is something specific that's right here in terms of meeting minutes, ordinances, resolutions, codes, and technical regulations. I think you're speaking about different records of the city.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how the wording of the records request comes in, whether it's specifying a time frame, whether it's specifying some sort of specificity. I mean, like those can really vary. And somebody in their minds, I may write a request one way and you may write it a different way, and we may be meaning to ask for the same records, but we may use different words to describe it. And so sometimes those words matter depending on the person who's fulfilling that request.
So I'm saying that because if the communication was much better, you know, I think we wouldn't have a problem. You know, we able to communicate with one another. And then after the 72 hours, after you don't receive it in the 72 hours, what would be the fine, the penalty?
There are penalties under the public records law if you don't respond. But for example, if it is a public record, sometimes what's requested is confidential information, or it includes confidential information. So that has to be redacted. You have to take out social security numbers and private cell phone numbers and maybe financial information or health information or various different things. So it really becomes, the judge would have to decide what's a reasonable response to that public records request. There's just no hard and fast rule other than you're supposed to get at least an acknowledgement that your public records request has been received within the 72 hours.
So you should get some type of acknowledgement, right, within the 72 hours?
Well, let me say this. So if you or I were to just send an email to a department head, that's not a public records request. A public records request is a more formal process, and there's a form on the city's website for that, and we have to pay for that. So if I make a public records request, I've got to pay for the cost of copying those records. And that's a very formal process, and that gets reviewed, that gets approved for being disseminated, and then it's sent off to the appropriate folks to respond to that. But that's different than just any of us sending an email to someone in the city. That is not what would be considered a formal public records request.
All right, thank you.
Number 5.
Department heads, 2021-0221. The committee unanimously agreed that all department heads shall be appointed by mayor and shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor, subject to council approval. Said department heads shall be subject to reconfirmation upon the renewal of each mayoral term. However, the committee could not reach a consensus or whether it should require a simple majority to reappoint or a minority, effectively a supermajority to terminate a serving department head.
Anyone from the public?
I would just say that this had lots of discussion in the committee as well. And the question becomes again as to whether is this authority to terminate a department head? If somebody is, I guess, appointed by the council, and then 6 months later, there's a new election, does that same person come before the council again for reconfirmation? We don't have reconfirmation right now. They serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and their performance is reviewed by the mayor. So.
Yes, and this would require a charter change. This is not something that the council could do just by an ordinance.
Someone needs to be taken out of here and put on the other group.
If there's a will to have it changed as to a reconfirmation of department heads, that would need to be a charter.
Yeah, I guess we never got, the issue was that I think there was communications that whether the council was, I guess, getting responsiveness that was adequate or not, and it was a way, this was something that was a way to put kind of a check and a balance on it. As I said, there was a lot of debate over whether it was a hiring or firing or whatnot. I don't really know that it's kind of a distinction without a difference, in the sense that y'all serve terms, that the department heads would serve terms, and it would just make it clear that when the terms renew, that it would be subject to reconfirmation.
Anyone else? Number 6.
Public Records 202-10128, requiring the independent audit required by Section 2-07 be made available on the city website.
Anyone from the public?
This is already done. The audit for the last, we usually have like the last 2 to 3 years up there. And then there's a link to the legislative auditor's website that has all the audits for the history. So I'm not sure why this was put forward.
The legislative audit is not necessarily audit. The legislative audit has specific requirements that it's done in undertaking to be addressed. The charter gives you all the right to conduct your own audit, and you could set the criteria as to what is audited or not audited. So that was just, it's not necessarily the same audit. If y'all are satisfied with the legislative audit, then yes, it's done. If you wanted something more in depth or different issues or whatever, this is not necessarily the same thing or not something that you have to do.
I'm confused on this one then, because this is the annual legislative auditor's audit. This is exactly the same thing. Unless the committee had something different. He said it would be about different issues maybe? This is the annual financial audit that gets presented to the council, that you hire the auditor, it's paid out of the city council budget. It's the financial audit that's performed annually according to the state standards that has to be submitted to the legislative auditor within 6 months after the fiscal year closes. It has to follow the national standards for accounting and governmental auditing.
Anyone else? All right. Number 7.
Term limits, 2022-0210. Unanimous recommendation that they be left as they currently stand.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council? Okay. Number 8.
Investigations, 2022-0210. Unanimous recommendation that section 2-06 be left unchanged.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council? Okay. Number 3.
A list of 3 issues that the committee unanimously agreed warranted further discussion, but were either unable to reach a consensus on or exceeded the ability of the committee to complete a thorough review with its resources and time available.
Okay.
Number 1, debt, 202-10325, 202-10524. The issue of the city's ability to incur debt came up and was discussed at length. Initially, the administration offered substantial argument in favor of amending the charter to allow the city to incur bonded debt without an election of the people. However, the mayor's nominee to the committee voiced strong opposition to the removal of the requirement that voters approve bonded debt. The mayor himself also suggested that the requirement was fine as is. The only argument in favor of removing the requirement completely seemed to be a matter of convenience. There were examples made of when it could be beneficial to the city to incur smaller amounts of debt that the cost of holding an election would not justify. The possibility of a hybrid system where debt up to a certain threshold would be permitted without an election. However, fixing that threshold seems somewhat arbitrary with the information available to the committee, so a proposal was not adopted, but it is believed that the issue warrants further consideration by the council.
Anyone from the public? Any questions or comments from anyone on the council?
Sorry. Could somebody explain this here to me, please, with the maladministration, what all she was had offered?
So we asked the charter committee to review this because we had had a very lengthy discussion in public meetings about bonded debt through council meetings and through the idea of when bonded debt would follow the state laws, which were not as stringent as local laws. When that interpretation came down, the former council had looked at bonding out $15 million. And when the interpretation of the charter came forward, it said that there was no ability to bond debt without an election of the people. And so this had been a discussion at that council meeting and at other public meetings about the ability of the city to bond debt. Whether you could buy a fire truck, for instance, over 2 fiscal years, or whether it had to be all within 1 year. You would essentially be borrowing the money in the next fiscal year, but so you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to buy it all within 1 year. There was a discussion about emergency provisions, and so I think the committee, if I'm speaking correctly, determined ultimately that the emergency provision was there for the council still to move forward with bonded debt only in emergency circumstances. But I'm sure that would be up to a certain threshold. So then there was a discussion about, well, could the council authorize financing debt or renting something or doing something along those lines if it was a smaller amount. So there was lots of discussion about this, and ultimately there was no provision for putting something on the ballot to say, here's how we would do this. So right now, any kind of debt is required to go before a vote of the people in order to occur.
As of right now, it go before the people.
That's correct. So for instance, I think something that came before y'all, when we sought out the loan or the clean water revolving loan to add the additional pond out at the sewer treatment plant to give us longer capacity for treating out there, that had to go before a vote of the people. Even though that interest rate was locked in, couldn't be changed because it was set by the federal government, even though the loan terms could not be negotiated and could not be changed, and even though there would be no additional cost to the voters, it wouldn't be tied to a rate change or a millage, a new tax or anything like that. So even though those three things were true, we still had to go to a vote of the people to decide whether they wanted the city to take out that loan at all.
All right.
Yeah, and 84% of the people decided yes, we wanted to do that. Oh yeah, the loan was 0.95% interest, which you'll never get from a bank. 20 years. So.
Number
2, accountability of the police chief, 202-10628, increasing accountability to public, particularly came up regarding police chief. Ideas were discussed, such as election versus appointment of the police chief, recall by public petition, etc.
Anyone from the public? Anyone from the council?
Yes. It's about the one that I was waiting on. My opinion that the police chief should be elected by the people and not appointed by the mayor. And I say this here now. We having problems in District 3 right now. We can't get the patrol in our community right now because it's a difference between the chief and I. So, and then when the police come out, they sit there and say, thanks to your councilman, that's why we here. Go talk to the bond, that's why we come out. And I'm saying that could really create a problem with me and the people in the community. So I'm definitely stand 100% in electing a chief, so that the chief have to answer to the mayor. He should have to answer to all the people. I think Frank, somebody stated earlier, and that's what I love about it. And I tell everybody, I work for the people. I don't work for nobody else. You call me, it's my job to do what you ask me to do, if I can. And so in the process of me saying that, when they call me and tell me about a street, about a ditch, about a park, I sit there and make my contact. So I would love for the chief to be elected by the people. So now the chief gonna have the same responsibilities as all of us up here. Thank you.
On that one point, there was a lot of discussion in the meetings about this. Councilman Wells, I respect your opinion. I respect you as a councilman. But I differ with you on this, and several of the members of the commission did. The mayor is the highest elected official in the city of Hammond. He is elected, or she is elected, by all of the people. If there are issues with any department head, that's an administrative issue that needs to be addressed, whether it's in your district or Councilman Gonzalez's district or Councilman Leon's district. That should be addressed. But once again, the mayor is the highest elected official in the city. He's elected by, or she, by all the people. So there wasn't a lot of support for that, quite frankly, in the, and as a matter of fact, it became such a hot topic that I sent a letter to the Attorney General's office after contacting the city attorney because it didn't seem like an appropriate place for the discussion to be taking place. And in addition to that, I also asked him about the council's decision to not let the mayor's appointee have a vote on this commission. That seemed fundamentally wrong to me, as did two other issues, and that had to do with family members of seated council members having a relative sit on this commission. That seemed like a clear conflict of interest in my mind, and I have no axe to grind with anybody. I enjoyed meeting these fine people and working with them, but it just seemed fundamentally wrong and not the right place for that discussion to take place. That's just my opinion.
Did any of y'all get paid on being on that committee?
What's that?
Did any of y'all get paid on being on that committee? Did you get paid? Did you get anything? Okay. No, yeah.
All volunteers.
Okay then, good.
And I want to say that there was a lot of input from the public for election of a police chief. Now, there was a lot of input in the public, and it was not as cut and dried as that. That's why it was not a majority of the people who voted, because we had so much conflict from the public, people wanting to elect a police chief versus people wanting to appoint a police chief. We went back and we looked at the advantages of both election and appointment, and we did decide that that was a decision that we should not make as the committee. But there were people who were concerned about the accountability of the police chief. What would happen, and the question was asked, what would happen if the police chief did something crazy that everybody thought that he should be removed, and the mayor made a decision not to remove him? So we asked about what type of checks and balances were in place to be able, that's where the idea of a recall petition and all of that came up. So there was a lot of discussion about the accountability of the police chief and whether or not there were things that the council or the public could do to say, well, you know, this guy is out there selling crack cocaine, and the mayor makes a decision, well, I'm not gonna let him, I'm not gonna fire him, you know. So what does the public, and I know he's not selling crack cocaine, I'm just using that as an example, don't get crazy. What would the public be able to do? What would the council be able to do if such a situation arrived, if the only person who could fire the chief of police or any other department head for that matter was the mayor? So that did come up, and I just want to put that out there that it was not, and we believe that we could not come to a conclusion about that. We had a lot of discussion. We had people come in and talk about this issue before us. So I don't want people to think it was just we just decided to go with appointment. It was because we felt like we couldn't come to a definitive answer, and if our agreement was that if we did not unanimously agree on something, we would not make it as a recommendation for you all to put on the charter. I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, Ms. Knighton.
Anyone else? All right. And number 3.
Community Policing, 202-10712, calls for implementation of true community policing activities in compliance with national standards on a systematic citywide permanent basis were repeatedly communicated to the committee by public input. The mayor's nominee repeatedly offered his lifelong experience as a city resident and his desire to achieve true community policing that city residents have long demanded. His calls for improvement were joined by the other members of the committee.
Any public comment? Any comment from anyone on the council?
That was actually my input, because going back as far as I can remember, my wife's late father was chief of police in Hammond in the 1930s. Lived 2 blocks away from here, grew up here. During many of the former mayor's tenure, there was a push towards community policing. They wanted beat cops on the street, going to your neighborhood and finding out what's the problem in your neighborhood. What do you have going on there that you don't like? In 1995, I actually had 2 officers come to my office at the direction of the mayor, and they were charged with going around and talking to each business owner in the city. And they came back and they compiled that data, and they did something about it. We have to have that if we're going to keep this community where we want to live. If there's a problem in any respective district that is a known problem, it needs to be dealt with effectively. And that's the only thing that, and I don't know what Chief Bergeron does in that regard, but I hadn't had an officer come by my office since 95, 96. So I guess that stopped for some reason. And if it's a matter of funding, if they don't have the funds to move us towards community policing, we need to find the funds. That is an absolute need for this city. I'm passionate about that.
Thank you.
I think what was also mentioned in the committee meetings is that there's lots of definitions of this term. And so maybe thinking towards the principles of what this means, because I think it's very obvious that our police spend a lot of efforts in neighborhood meetings, in homeowners association meetings, in public meetings, in public outreach, in Camp Blue, or all the different events that we have in the Citizens Academy, all those different ways that happens. So I think the call maybe here is thinking through what do we all envision as community policing?
You know,
My vision as a community police and a police in the neighborhood, I'm gonna say the park, a police in the park, and the kids come up to him and ask him how he doing. He asking the kids how they doing. Be exact, that's how the chief got in there by my vote, because he was supposed to do community policing, not come giving out tickets, not coming harassing people, but actually come out giving tickets. So that's what my vision was. And then the gentleman just spoke about he have a relative or something that was a chief. And see, that what goes on in our community. See, we don't have relatives. We don't have nobody that look like us be a chief that can come and sit down and talk to the black kids that look like me. We don't have that. And so, yes, I do have an issue with it, you know. And I would love, and that's what I thought when I voted for the chief, that he was gonna come play basketball in the park, or his staff come out there and play basketball with the kids. Gonzalez and I talked, you know, the kids in my community, I don't want them going to her community doing nothing wrong. So, and I told her, so everything you have in your community, if we had it in our community, I don't have to worry about the kids going over there. So I'm saying all that to say this here. Everything we talked about community policing, when he stood before us, it was understood that he gonna do this, he gonna do that. But you know, and all the councilors know. And right now, everybody's so quiet because we dealing with the election, so ain't nobody gonna talk right now because they don't know what's gonna happen. But yes, I've been wanting the community police. And then in the meantime, he's speaking now, I shouldn't even be saying it. My wife is running for mayor, so guess what? That's one of the things that she have on there, community policing. So I've been asked for community policing. And sit down, we knew we got a drug problem on Live Vote. This ain't just started yesterday. Janice talked about the drug problem. Janice Beard Carter talked about drug problem 4 years ago. And guess what? We still got a drug problem on Live Vote. And then, if for the record, and just in case y'all don't know, the chief would tell you how many people done died on Live Oak Street for bad drugs in the area. So yeah, we got a real problem over there. Have it been solved? We just had this discussion the other night at the council meeting. We got a drug house on Kansas Street. So we can sit here and act like no problem going on. But you know what? You don't have a problem. You stay by Southeastern. Yes, I got several problems going on. We talked about the four-wheelers. We talked about the dirt bike that the police just overlook, don't see. No, it's not in your community. But in the black communities, ride through there and you'll see. That's the problem now. We sit up here, we talk, and we act like ain't nothing going on. It's a perfect world. It's this and that. Yes, that's your world. But if you come and see how my world look, that's why I ask for so much, because we have so many problems in the black community. So, yeah, we have plenty of problems. I never had nobody kin to me in law enforcement. But guess what? Whenever we had a problem, I can call Officer Banks. I can call Officer Brown. I can call Melvin Wells. You know, they not kin to me, but we can call them and tell them this is the issue that we're having. Now, we don't see that. Look how many white polices that we have versus black police. So you know what? I do have an issue because guess what? The crime, it's ridiculous in our area. We ain't gonna call the police every time something take place because guess what? We don't want him to break in our car again. We don't want him to break in our house again because you know what? We scared. So we do have a problem. So what you said, that was good for you, but it's not good for my community at all. So yes, I have a real problem. And you're right, we do. So it's not just me. Sir? Yeah, okay. I think one time you made a statement one time. You said you called the police one time, and Hammond actually came to your house. And they say, did you make that statement in y'all meeting one time? One of the guys in y'all meeting, well, I'm gonna say it this here. One of the guys in your meeting made a statement that they called Hammond Police Department. And Hammond Police Department say, man, we ain't never came here. We never had a problem. I say, damn, I wish I could say that.
This is just me as a citizen talking. I have a friend I went to high school with, Hammond High, and he was a detective in the police department. He retired now. I learned for the first time about gangs that we have in our town, and gangs that are floating in from New Orleans and Baton Rouge to our town. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how much money it takes. I don't care what kind of personnel it takes. It's time to address that and keep our city what we grew up in. And I'll support you 100% in that regard, without question.
Yeah. Thank you for supporting me 100% in that regard. But guess what? We need. No. I'm used to everything y'all do.
First off, obviously, the community policing is, you know, you have one person's thought on it, another person's thought on it. We do a lot of community policing. We're always open for ideas. That's why we try to do meetings with neighborhoods as much as we can, so people can give us different ideas on what they'd like us to do. As far as the gangs go, look, we're having an absolute impact on it, guys. All you got to do is take 5 minutes of your time and go sit and talk with Chase Safuto, not Edwin Bergeron, Detective Safuto, who's working it every day on some of the things that he's doing and some of the things that we're accomplishing. So, you know, community policing is something that has evolved tremendously. I know, Kip, you've been in law enforcement and you've probably seen it change 20 times over your career. Every time somebody comes up, they have a different idea of what community policing is. You know, and we're doing a bunch of things. We're involved in the community. We're doing the kids camp. We do the Citizens Academy and a bunch of other things as one side of the community policing. And we are patrolling neighborhoods. Officers are assigned districts, which we have 4 districts, not 5 like y'all. And within those districts, they're assigned neighborhoods in which they're to be patrolling and to be making contact with citizens within it. So that is stuff that is going on, but we're always open for suggestions. Listen, it's an evolving, constant thing. Law enforcement has changed tremendously over the last 3 years, and it's going to continue to change. So any suggestions, anything like that you'd like to make, look, we're all for it. Let's bring your aspect, what you think community policing needs to be, and let's try to implement those things. It's easy to just sit around and cast stones, but let's be part of the solution, not just always point out the problems.
And I would say with the community police, and actually I've been in contact with some guys from the Baton Rouge Police Department through an organization that I'm a part of to get some information and feedback on how they run some of their programs. They actually have a department inside of their department that's strictly set up for that, was the first thing that I learned. And second, I'm going through some information with them to see some of the things that we could probably use here. So as the chief did state, as everybody has stated, things do change. You know, they're looking at doing it one way this way, and they realize we got this issue here, we need to revamp this, rechange it. But yeah, it's definitely something needed to be in place, and yeah, I'm doing a little background into it And I was glad that the guys from Baton Rouge PD allowed me the opportunity to conversate with them and get different information that we could probably use. But I did find out that they do have a special division that's just set for that. But I don't know if we have the manpower to do that here as of yet, but that's one thing that works good in their favor.
And I'm gonna say this here, Councilman Kip, President Kip, community policing, and for what the stats shows, from what I read, community policing reduce crime. Community police, real community policing, it reduce crime. So if you had that, really had it, not just on paper, not just speaking about it, if you really had community policing, it reduced crime. Thank you.
Because that committee would be a place where citizens could come in, and if there are situations going on and they're not afraid, because some of them actually are afraid to come forward, but that would also be an avenue to say, I live here, the police never passed my house, and we know that there's some gambling going on, there's some drug selling going on. That would also be an opportunity for those citizens to come before this committee and present their concerns to you all. You know, people say you can't have eyes everywhere, but if you have a committee where the community feels comfortable coming and talking and knowing that their thoughts and their ideas will be presented to the council, whether they're good or bad, improving or whatever, that would be a long way toward making people feel like the city and the administration cared about it.
Thank you, Ms. Knight.
I know we've had a long day today, so I'm gonna make this really quick as I can. Chief, you're hiring right now?
Yeah.
Encourage some of your people in your district to apply at our police department, to become a policeman for our city of Hammond, that are part of our city, thread of our city, so that they can be a part, and you know them. Encourage some of the people you know in your district to apply for the city police department. And I am not saying this, I am being respectful, I am not doing this in a confrontational way, but I know at council meetings recently, I've heard you say you got people speeding in your district. The police need to do something about it. It sounds like they've been writing tickets in your area, but now that's not good. I don't know, Councilman Wells, I'm just, you're asking for these things, and it sounds like some of it's taking place, and then that's not what you want either.
You know, just like you said, apply for the job. So let's black officers apply for the job. You know, and like I said, it's easy for you to come up here and say that, but when they apply for the job, you know who they have to deal with? They have to deal with the chief, and they have to deal with HR. They make a decision on who they want. So, you know, it's easy to say apply for a job, people that look like me. But when you have nobody that gonna sit there actually look at the application, you know yourself what takes place. You know what go on, because you know what? You made us stay at a meeting last 2 weeks that you wasn't even supposed to come today. But you got every time you come, you get your point out, you know, and it's amazing how you get your point out and you want everybody to hear you, but you don't stay in those communities. You know, it's easy to say apply for a job. But you know what? When you're dealing with people that don't look like you and coming to fill out that application, yeah, they have trouble. They can't pass this test. They can't pass that test. But you know what? It don't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on. That's why everybody's so afraid now, because if they file a complaint, they go through this, they go through that, they go through harassment. You don't never have to go through that, because you know why? You can always call the mayor. You can call Lacey. You can get your problem taken care of. We can't get our problems taken care of like that. We just want everybody just do what's right. Just be fair. That's all I ask for. And you know, and it's like, I'm asking for too much just to be fair, just to be right.
So just as a point of information, application process is governed by state law. It's a state test that they have to pass in order to apply to be police officer or firefighter. And then there's hiring boards in both of those departments that are made up of diverse officers, both in rank, in race, in gender, and all those things. So it's a hiring board that actually hires the people. It's not the HR department or the chief of police. It's the hiring board that makes the recommendations.
Anyone else?
I just want to thank, again, the committee. I know some, it's dwindled down, we only have 2 left, but thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the public that came out, and I know it was a long process for you guys, but it's greatly appreciated. Some great stuff for us to consider. So thank you.
Is there any way that I can start getting lunch if I'm coming at lunch hour to eat something? I'm hungry.
I want to thank,
Gavel, gavel.
Thank you.
also that I just want to make a brief comment as well before we adjourn, thanking the committee, thanking everybody that took out time today to come, thanking the council as well for their input on this process again. And again, we are all trying to move the city forward. Again, thanks everyone that took a part in this today. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
You won't have to see me again.